Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was Principal Nezu reincarnation. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The waiting room of the Tsubasa clinic smelled of antiseptic, stale lollipops, and the nervous sweat of parents praying for a miracle. It was a sensory profile that Izuku Midoriya would one day find repulsive. A cocktail of biological anxiety and chemical masking agents. But today, he was 4 years old. Today, the world was bright, loud, and bursting with the primary colors of heroism. He sat on the edge of the crinkly paper that covered the examination table, his legs swinging back and forth like pendulums fueled by pure adrenaline. In his hands, a limited edition Silver Age All Might action figure, the one with the articulated cape, performed a series of high-speed aerial maneuvers. Ha! Do not fear! Izuku squeaked, dropping his voice an octave to mimic the booming baritone of the symbol of peace. Why? Because I am here. Izuku, sweetie, please sit still, Inko Midoriya said gently, though her hands were wringing together in her lap. She was a woman made of soft edges and deep wells of worry. The doctor will be back any minute with the X-rays. But Mom! Izuku beamed, his emerald eyes wide and vibrating with light. This is it. My quirk. What do you think it is? Can I breathe fire like Dad? Or maybe I can pull things like you. Or maybe it's a combination. Maybe I can pull fire. That would be very dangerous, Inko laughed nervously, reaching out to smooth his unruly green curls. But wonderful. The door creaked open. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The air grew heavy, static. A bald man with a thick mustache and oversized, round goggles stepped in. Dr. Kudite Tsubasa. To a child, he looked funny, like a cartoon character. To anyone with an instinct for survival, he looked like a predator wearing a lab coat. He didn't smile. He walked to his desk, sat down with a heavy sigh, and slapped a radiograph film onto the light board. The monochrome image of a child's foot flickered into view. Izuku froze. The action figure in his hand lowered. You should probably give up, the doctor said. The words didn't land like a gentle suggestion. They landed like a guillotine. Inko gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Doctor, what? Is there something wrong with him? Look here, Tsubasa said, tapping the X-ray with a pen. He didn't look at the boy. He rarely looked at the subjects. Usually, by the age of 4, a child manifests their quirk, but there is an early indicator we look for. The presence or absence of the extra joint in the pinky toe. He tapped the image again. Tap. 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 The sound echoed in the silent room. People with quirks have evolved past this useless joint. Their bodies are streamlined for the next stage of humanity. But your son? Tsubasa turned in his chair, the light reflecting off his goggles, hiding his eyes. He has 2 joints. It's a rare throwback. An evolutionary cul-de-sac. He is perfectly, mundanely human. He is quirkless. The world stopped. For Izuku Midoriya, the silence wasn't empty. It was a physical weight, crushing the air out of his small lungs. The bright colors of the room desaturated into gray. The All Might figure slipped from his numb fingers, clattering loudly against the linoleum floor. Give up. The phrase echoed in his mind, bouncing off the walls of his skull. It reverberated, louder and louder, until it wasn't a sound anymore, but a frequency. A high-pitched, piercing frequency that drilled into the core of his being. Give up. Give up? Me? Give up? Something deep inside the boy's psyche. A barrier that had held for 4 years, a dam meant to contain a soul too large for such a small vessel, began to crack under the pressure of the emotional trauma. The shock was the key. The despair was the door. Izuku's pupils dilated until the green was almost swallowed by black. His breath hitched. His heart hammered against his ribs. Thump thump, thump thump. Too fast, too hard. Pain. A blinding, searing white light exploded behind his eyes. It felt as though his brain was being rewired in real time, neurons firing in patterns that human biology was never meant to sustain. Synapses bridged gaps that shouldn't exist. Where am I? Cold. It's so cold. Where is my fur? Why are my paws so hairless? Why are my fingers so long? The high spec. The algorithm. The T. Nezu. The name wasn't a word, it was an identity. It slammed into Izuku's consciousness like a freight train. Memories that weren't his. Memories of cages, of white coats, of scalpels, of pain, of liberation, of teaching, of tea leaves steeping at exactly 85 degrees Celsius, flooded his 4-year-old mind. The boy's head snapped back. He gasped, a ragged intake of air that sounded like a drowning victim surfacing. Izuku! Inko cried out, reaching for him. Doctor, he's hyperventilating. He's just in shock, Tsubasa dismissed, waving a hand. It's a lot for a kid to take. He'll get over it. The boy on the table stopped shaking. Slowly, terrifyingly slowly, Izuku Midoriya lowered his head. When he looked up again, the tears that had been gathering in his eyes hadn't fallen. They had evaporated. The trembling in his lip was gone. His posture, previously slumped in devastation, corrected itself with an eerie, mechanical precision. He sat up straight, his spine aligning perfectly. He looked at the X-ray. Then he looked at Dr. Tsubasa. The innocence was gone. In its place was a gaze of chilling, razor-sharp intellect. It was the look of a creature that had been dissected 1,000 times, and had learned exactly how to hold the scalpel itself. Doctor, Izuku said. His voice was still high, still the voice of a preschooler, but the cadence was wrong. It was clipped. Polysyllabic. Sophisticated. Izuku? Inko whispered, her hand freezing inches from his shoulder. Izuku ignored her, his eyes locked on Tsubasa. He pointed a small, scarred finger at the X-ray. Your diagnosis relies on the distinct correlation between the physiological vestigiality of the pedal phalanges and the metagene expression, Izuku said. The words tumbled out, crisp and dry. However, while statistically significant, that marker is from a study conducted nearly 50 years ago by Dr. Garaki. It has a margin of error of approximately 4.5% due to mutations that do not affect skeletal structure but still repress the quirk factor. Furthermore, citing it as an absolute is intellectually lazy. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Dr. Tsubasa blinked. His mouth opened slightly beneath his mustache. Excuse me? Izuku tilted his head. A small, almost manic smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. He raised a hand and tapped his own temple. Furthermore, Izuku continued, looking around the room with a critical sneer, your filing system is atrocious. I count 3 violations of the Health Information Privacy Act just from where I am sitting. And that diploma on the wall? It's hung 3 degrees off-center. If your medical practice is as sloppy as your interior design, it is a miracle your patients survive the waiting room. Izuku! Inko shrieked, horror replacing her worry. You can't speak to the doctor like that. Izuku blinked, the intensity fading slightly as he turned to his mother. He looked at her, really looked at her, and processed the data. Inko Midoriya. Mother. High anxiety levels. Elevated cortisol. Telekinetic quirk. Minor attraction of small objects. Caring. Protective. Good. He softened. The feral edge retracted, though the intelligence remained. My apologies, Mother, Izuku said, smoothing down his shorts. I was merely offering a peer review. Logic dictates that incompetence should be called out before it results in malpractice. He hopped off the table. He felt heavy. Gravity pulled at him differently than he remembered. He felt naked. He rubbed his arms, missing the sensation of soft white fur. Human skin is so inefficient, he thought. Poor insulation. No natural armor. Disgusting. He walked over to the fallen All Might figure. He picked it up, examining the plastic molding. Injection molded PVC, he muttered. Sloppy paint application on the belt. Mass-produced sentimentality. He placed the toy in his pocket, then turned back to the stunned adults. Well? Izuku asked, clasping his hands behind his back, a gesture far too old for him. Are we leaving? I believe this appointment has reached the point of diminishing returns. Also, this room smells of desperation and cheap disinfectant. It is giving me a headache. Dr. Tsubasa stared at the boy. For a fleeting second, a flicker of genuine recognition, or perhaps fear, passed behind the doctor's goggles. The way the boy stood. The specific tilt of the head. The gleam in the eyes that said, "I am smarter than you, and we both know it." It reminded him of something. Or someone. "Get him out of here, Mrs. Midoriya," Tsubasa said, his voice low. Yes. Yes, of course. I'm so sorry, Doctor." Inko grabbed Izuku's hand and practically dragged him out of the room. As they exited, Izuku glanced back over his shoulder. He locked eyes with Tsubasa one last time. Izuku didn't wave. He merely nodded, a gesture of equals, before the door swung shut. The car ride home was quiet. Usually, this was the time Izuku would be babbling about what he wanted for dinner or asking if they could stop at the park. Today, he sat in his booster seat, staring out the window with the intensity of a surveillance drone. His mind was a hurricane. Status report, he thought, organizing his mental landscape like a filing cabinet. Identity, previously Principal Nezu of UA High. Current, Izuku Midoriya. Species, human. Age 4. Quirk, none identified. Intelligence, intact. Memories fragmented but rapidly reintegrating. He flexed his fingers. 10 digits. Opposable thumbs on the hands only. No tail. No snout. I died, he realized. The memory was fuzzy. Old age? No, his lifespan should have been longer. Stress? Perhaps. Or perhaps poison? He pushed that thought aside for later analysis. He looked at his reflection in the car window. A round, freckled face stared back. Green hair. Big eyes. I look ridiculous, he thought. Where is the dignity? Where is the scar? He touched his right eye. He could still feel the phantom pain of the scar that humans had given him in the lab so many years ago. The reminder of what humanity was capable of. Wait. He looked at his hands again. I am human. A wave of nausea rolled over him. He was one of them. The species that caged. The species that experimented. Izuku? Inko's voice broke through his internal crisis. She was driving, but she kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were red. Honey, are you okay? You said some very strange things back there. Izuku took a deep breath. He needed to calibrate. He couldn't be Nezu right now. Nezu was a terrified, angry chimera who learned to smile to hide the teeth. Izuku was a boy who loved his mother. He had to blend them. A synthesis. I am fine, Mother, Izuku said. His voice was calmer now. I was just thinking. The doctor made me angry. He was rude. He was giving us news we didn't want to hear, Inko said, her voice trembling. Izuku, about your quirk. It doesn't matter, Izuku interrupted. Inko flinched. What? The quirk, Izuku said, staring at the passing cityscape. He saw a hero flying in the distance, some low-ranked capes struggling to catch a purse snatcher. Inefficient flight path, Izuku noted. Too much drag. It is merely a tool. A biological anomaly. Having one does not make you a hero. Lacking one does not make you useless. It is the application of the mind that determines worth. Inko slowed the car down as they approached a red light. She turned to look at him, baffled. Izuku, where did you learn words like application? Izuku paused. Error. Vocabulary exceeds age parameters. Adjusting. TV, he lied smoothly. I watched a documentary. Inko seemed to accept this, mostly because she was too emotionally exhausted to argue. Well, okay. We're almost home. I'll make katsudon. Your favorite. Katsudon is acceptable, Izuku nodded. Then, a thought struck him. A craving so powerful it nearly made him drool. Mother? Yes, sweetie? Do we have tea? Tea? We have barley tea in the fridge. Izuku wrinkled his nose. No proper tea. Camellia sinensis. Earl Grey? Darjeeling? Perhaps a nice gyokuro? Inko laughed, a wet, sad sound. I think I have some Lipton tea bags in the back of the cupboard. Izuku suppressed a shudder. Dust in a bag. Barbaric. That will have to do. For now. The apartment was exactly as he remembered it, yet entirely alien. It was smaller. The colors were brighter. Inko went straight to the kitchen to start cooking, trying to hide her sobbing. Izuku walked to the computer desk. This was the ritual. In the canon of his life, the one he was supposed to live, he would sit here and watch the All Might debut video until his eyes dried out. He would ask his mother if he could still be a hero, and she would apologize. He climbed onto the chair. His legs dangled. He reached for the mouse. Click. Click. Clack. He navigated the browser with an ease that should have been impossible for a toddler. He pulled up the video. All Might debut. 100 million views. He hit play. On the screen, the disaster unfolded. Fire. Rubble. And then the man? The pillar. All Might, laughing, carrying a bus on his back. I am here. Izuku watched. He didn't cry. He leaned in, his eyes narrowing. Fascinating, he whispered. He paused the video. He rewound. He played it frame by frame. Look at the quadriceps, he muttered to himself, tracing the screen. The torque generated from the hips. He isn't just using strength. He's utilizing a kinetic shockwave to displace the air pressure, creating a vacuum that smothers the flames. High risk, high reward. If he miscalculated the angle by 2 degrees, he would have collapsed the structural integrity of the bridge. He sat back. He is a brute, Izuku concluded. A magnificent, charismatic, overpowering brute. He is the symbol of peace, yes. But he is not the symbol of logic. He looked at his own hands again. I can do better, he whispered. Izuku? He spun around. Inko was standing in the doorway, holding a bowl of katsudon. She looked heartbroken. This was the moment. The script required her to say, I'm sorry. She walked over and set the bowl down. She looked at the screen, at All Might's smiling face. Tears spilled over her cheeks. She dropped to her knees and hugged him, burying her face in his chest. I'm so sorry, Izuku. She wailed. I'm so sorry. Izuku stiffened. He felt the wetness of her tears on his shirt. He felt the trembling of her frame. In his past life, Nezu had rarely been hugged. He had been petted, sure. Restrained. But hugged? It was warm. He awkwardly patted her back. Mother, he said softly. Why are you apologizing? Because. She sobbed. You wanted to be a hero so badly. Izuku pulled back slightly. He placed his small hands on her cheeks and forced her to look at him. I do not want to be a hero, Mother, he said firmly. Inko blinked, confused. You don't? No, Izuku said. A shadow passed over his face, a glimpse of the high-spec bear that once ruled the most prestigious school in the country. I intend to be the one who fixes them. He looked past her, out the window toward the distant skyline. Society has become complacent, he declared, his voice gaining that eerie, professorial edge again. The crime rate is suppressed, not solved. UA is running on the fumes of All Might's charisma. The board of directors is likely comprised of nepotistic bureaucrats who care more about merchandising rights than student safety. It is a mess. He looked back at Inko. I don't need a quirk to fix a mess, Mother. I need a plan. And tea. Definitely tea. Inko stared at him. She checked his forehead for a fever. Izuku, are you sure you're feeling okay? I have never been better, Izuku said, and for the first time, he smiled. It wasn't the smile of a child. It was a toothy, terrifying grin that promised chaos. Now, please. The Lipton. Steep it for exactly 3 minutes. Do not squeeze the bag, or you will release the tannins and ruin the flavor profile. 2 weeks later, Aldera Kindergarten. The sandbox was a microcosm of society. The strong took the best shovels. The weak were relegated to the mud. Katsuki Bakugo sat atop the highest mound of sand, small explosions popping in his palms like firecrackers. He was the king. He had the quirk, the praise, and the attitude. Hey, Deku! Bakugo shouted, pointing a finger at the green-haired boy sitting on a bench near the fence. Why aren't you playing? Are you too scared you'll break your quirkless bones? The other kids laughed. It was the law of the playground. Izuku didn't look up. He was reading a book. Not a picture book. A thick, hardcover encyclopedia titled The History of Quirk Jurisprudence, Volume 4. He had checked it out of the local library using Inko's card after arguing with the librarian for 20 minutes about age restrictions. I'm talking to you! Bakugo roared, sliding down the sand mound. He marched over, flanked by his 2 lackeys. Izuku turned a page. I heard you, Katsuki. I simply chose to deprioritize your vocal output. It lacked informational value. Bakugo froze. Ha! What did you say? Izuku sighed. He closed the book, marking his place with a pristine bookmark. He looked up at Bakugo. I said you're boring, Izuku said calmly. The playground went silent. Bakugo's face turned red. I'll kill you! He lunged, his right hand crackling with an explosion aimed straight at Izuku's face. In any other timeline, Izuku would have flinched. He would have cried. He would have taken the hit. But Nezu had fought alongside All Might. Nezu had calculated the trajectory of debris in the middle of disasters. Nezu possessed an IQ that broke the measuring scale. Izuku didn't move his whole body. He simply tilted his head 2 inches to the left. Boom! The explosion missed his ear by a millimeter, singing a lock of green hair. Bakugo stumbled forward, off balance from the missed swing. Perform, Izuku critiqued. Before Bakugo could recover, Izuku extended his foot. Not a kick. A trip. He placed his red sneaker exactly where Bakugo's foot needed to land. Bakugo hit the dirt face first. You possess a powerful quirk, Izuku said, standing up and dusting off his shorts. He looked down at the sputtering Bakugo. But your center of gravity is too high. You telegraph your attacks with your shoulders. And your emotional volatility makes you predictable. Bakugo scrambled up, spitting sand. You quirkless reject. That was luck, was it? Izuku asked. He took a step forward. The air around him seemed to darken. The shadow of the jungle gym stretched over him, forming the silhouette of a beast much larger than a 4-year-old boy. Let us analyze your behavior, Katsuki, Izuku said, his voice dropping to a whisper that only Bakugo could hear. You bully others to validate your own superiority. Why? Is it because the teachers praise you too much? Or is it a deep-seated inferiority complex masking itself as arrogance? Are you afraid that if you aren't the best, you are nothing? Bakugo's eyes widened. He took a step back. He didn't understand all the words, but he understood the feeling. He felt like a mouse being stared down by a snake. Get away from me! Bakugo yelled, small sparks popping erratically. As you wish, Izuku said pleasantly. He picked up his book. I have reading to do. The laws regarding vigilante licensing are riddled with loopholes. It is quite fascinating. He walked away, leaving the future king of explosions trembling in the sandbox. From the window of the teacher's lounge, the kindergarten supervisor watched, sipping her coffee. She shivered. That Midoriya kid, she muttered to her colleague. Is it just me, or is he scary? The home front adaptation. The next few months were a montage of rapid evolution. Izuku Midoriya realized quickly that his human body was a limitation. Nezu had been an animal with high specs, durable, agile, with senses tuned for survival. Izuku was squishy. Muscle atrophy is unacceptable, he declared one morning. He began a regimen. Not the reckless heavy lifting of a shonen protagonist, but a scientifically optimized routine of calisthenics, flexibility training, and cardio. He turned the living room into a gym. He also turned the kitchen into a laboratory. Mother, this diet is insufficient for optimal brain function, he told Inko. We need more omega-3 fatty acids. More blueberries. Less processed sugar. Inko, bless her heart, just went along with it. She was just happy he wasn't crying about being quirkless anymore. In fact, Izuku seemed to have skipped the grieving stage entirely and moved straight to the plotting world domination stage. But the biggest change was the notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future. It wasn't a sketchbook anymore. It was a dossier. Izuku sat at his desk, the lamp illuminating pages filled with dense, tiny handwriting. Target, empty lady debut. Quirk, gigantification. Weakness, limited mobility in urban environments. Collateral damage risk, high. Economic impact of debut, negative. Road repair cost exceeded villain bounty. Psychological profile, attention-seeking. Prone to vanity. Susceptible to media manipulation. He flipped the page. Target, Kamui Woods. Quirk Arbor. Weakness, fire, obviously. Desiccation. Termites. Potential improvement. Fire retardant resin coating needed for suit. Why has his support company not implemented this? Incompetence. Izuku tapped his pen against his chin. The standard of heroism has dropped, he murmured. They are performers. Gladiators for the camera. He looked at the empty space on his wall where an All Might poster used to be. He had taken it down. In its place, he had pinned a map of UA High. I need to go back, he said. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was duty. UA was his fortress. His sanctuary. And from what he could gather from the news, the current administration was running it into the ground. The acceptance rate was skewed. The security protocols were outdated. The curriculum hadn't been updated in a decade. They are letting the garden wither, Izuku hissed. He closed the notebook. He needed resources. He was 4 years old. He had no money, no authority, and a bedtime of 8 p.m. Obstacles, he said, hopping off his chair. Merely variables to be solved. He walked into the living room. Inko was watching a soap opera. Mother, Izuku said. Yes, Izuku? I require a computer upgrade. And access to the stock market. Inko blinked. The stock market? Izuku, you're 4. I am aware of my chronological age. However, I have identified a pattern in the support gear industry stocks. Detonarat Company is about to release a new line of lifestyle support items. Their stock is undervalued. If we invest your savings now, I project a 300% return by the fiscal quarter. Inko stared at him. She looked at the TV. She looked back at him. Izuku, are you a genius? That is a reductive term, Izuku said. But yes. Functionally. Inko hesitated. She was a risk-averse woman. But she looked at her son, his serious eyes, his confident stance. Since the diagnosis, he had been different. Scarier, yes. But also, stronger. Okay, she whispered. But if we lose the money, no premium tea for a month. Izuku smiled. Deal. The time skip, the beach. 6 years passed. Izuku Midoriya was 10. He was short for his age, but his build was wiry and compact. He moved with a grace that was almost unnatural, silent and precise. He stood at the edge of Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. It was a garbage dump. Mountains of trash, rusted cars, and discarded appliances stretched as far as the eye could see. It was an eyesore. A health hazard. It was also a puzzle. Izuku adjusted his red sneakers. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up and a green vest. He looked like a miniature professor on a field trip. Disgusting, he commented, sniffing the air. Methane buildup. Rust particulates. A testament to human laziness. He wasn't here to clean it with his bare hands. That would be inefficient. He walked over to a pile of scrap electronics. He pulled out a rusted microwave, a car battery, and the motor from a broken fan. Let's see, he muttered, his eyes flashing. If I'd bypass the safety regulator on the microwave and splice it with the fan motor. He pulled a screwdriver from his pocket. An hour later, he had built a monstrosity. It looked like a robot crab made of nightmares. It hummed with dangerous electrical energy. Unit 01, Izuku said. Activate. The machine whirred to life. Its claw, made from a car bumper, snapped shut. Clear Sector 4, Izuku commanded, pointing at a pile of tires. The machine rolled forward and began aggressively hurling tires into a designated sorting pile. Izuku sat on a clean patch of sand, opened a thermos, and poured a cup of steaming jasmine tea. He took a sip, watching his creation work. Hey! Kid! Izuku didn't flinch. He recognized the voice. Or rather, the heavy, thudding footsteps that accompanied it. He turned slowly. Standing at the top of the stairs, looking gaunt and skeletal in his baggy clothes, was Toshinori Yagi. All Might in his true form. Izuku's eyes narrowed. Gastric resection. Left lung removal. Severe emaciation. He looks like a walking corpse. This is a restricted area, sort of, Toshinori called out, coughing into his hand. It's dangerous to play with trash, young man. Izuku took another sip of tea. I am not playing, Izuku said calmly. I am engaging in civic duty through automated engineering. And you, sir, should not be exerting yourself. Your respiratory efficiency is below 40%. Toshinori froze. He stared at the boy. How did you? Izuku stood up. He brushed the sand off his trousers. You possess a distinctive gait favoring your left side, Izuku recited. Pallor suggests chronic anemia. And you smell of copper and American confectionaries. Izuku walked up the stairs until he was standing toe-to-toe with the skeletal giant. He wasn't intimidated. He looked disappointed. You are All Might, Izuku stated. It wasn't a question. Toshinori choked. Blood sprayed from his mouth. I know. I am just a random skeleton man. Please, Izuku rolled his eyes. I have studied your skeletal structure from public footage. The slope of the zygomatic arch is identical. Also, you are the only person in Japan who wears cargo pants of that specific era. Toshinori slumped. The gig was up. You're a sharp kid. I am observant, Izuku corrected. And you are dying. The bluntness hit Toshinori like a punch. Well, yes. An old injury. Toxic chainsaw? Izuku asked. No, Toshinori said, surprised. That was just for the media. It was a powerful villain. 5 years ago. All for one, Izuku whispered. The name hung in the air like poison. Toshinori grabbed Izuku's shoulder, his eyes wide with genuine terror. Where did you hear that name? Izuku looked at the hand on his shoulder. Then he looked up at All Might. I know many things, Izuku said, his voice dropping into that chilling, Nezu-esque register. I know that Yui is hiding secrets. I know that the symbol of peace is crumbling. And I know that if you do not find a successor soon, society will collapse into chaos within 6 months of your retirement. Toshinori stared at the boy. Green curly hair. Freckles. And the eyes of a general who had seen 1,000 wars. Who are you? Toshinori whispered. Izuku smiled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. A business card he had printed himself. He handed it to All Might. Izuku Midoriya, consultant. Strategist. Future principal. I am the one who is going to fix this school, Izuku said. But first, we need to do something about your training regimen. Hauling fridges is inefficient for your condition. You need swimming. Low impact, high resistance. He walked past All Might, heading back toward the city. Come along, Yagi-san, Izuku called out without looking back. I'll buy you lunch. You need protein. And then, we are going to discuss the structural flaws of the entrance exam. I have concerns. Toshinori Yagi stood on the stairs, clutching the business card. He looked at the beach, where the nightmare robot was efficiently sorting trash. He looked at the boy walking away with the confidence of a king. For the first time in years, the crushing weight on All Might's shoulders felt just a little bit lighter. What represents a principle? He muttered to himself. He hurried to catch up. The ecosystem of mediocrity. Aldera Junior High was, in Izuku Midoriya's professional estimation, a petri dish of mediocrity. It was a standard municipal educational facility, gray walls, fluorescent lights that hummed at a frequency specifically designed to induce migraines, and a student body composed largely of hormonal variables bouncing off one another in a chaotic, uncalculated fashion. Izuku sat at his desk in the back row, his posture impeccable. While the other students slouched, gossiped, or frantically copied homework due in 5 minutes, Izuku was engaged in a ritual of civilization. He unscrewed the cap of his brushed steel thermos. A wisp of steam curled upward, carrying the delicate, grassy aroma of a first flushed gyukuro. He poured a small amount into the cap cup, brought it to his nose, inhaled deeply, and took a precise sip. 70 degrees Celsius, he murmured to himself. Acceptable. The steeping time was perhaps 10 seconds too long, resulting in a slightly elevated astringency. But given the limitations of brewing at 6 a.m., it is within the margin of error. The classroom door slid open. The teacher, a man whose quirk seemed to be the ability to sweat through his shirt regardless of the ambient temperature, shuffled in carrying a stack of papers. All right, settle down, the teacher droned, slapping the papers onto the podium. The class noise dropped from a roar to a murmur. Izuku placed his tea down on a coaster he had brought from home. He folded his hands on the desk. To his right, a student whispered something about a video game. To his left, another student was sleeping, and 3 rows ahead, Katsuki Bakugo sat with his feet on the desk, radiating an aura of volatile arrogance that felt less like confidence and more like an unshielded nuclear reactor. Since you're all third years now, the teacher began, wiping his forehead, it's time to think seriously about your futures. I would pass out these career aptitude forms, but... He paused for dramatic effect. He grabbed the stack of papers and threw them into the air. I assume you all want to be heroes. The classroom exploded. It was a Pavlovian response. At the word hero, 30 students simultaneously activated their quirks. Hands turned into rocks, eyes extended on stalks, minor telekinesis rattled the windows. It was a cacophony of biological showing off. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks, the teacher said, beaming. But remember, it's against the law to use them in school. Teach. The voice cut through the noise like a serrated knife. Katsuki Bakugo kicked his desk, leaning back in his chair with a sneer that threatened to split his face. Don't lump me in with these extras, Bakugo scoffed. Comparing me to this bunch of losers is an insult. They'll be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some D-list hero. I'm the real deal. The class erupted in outrage. Hey! That's uncalled for, Bakugo. Who do you think you are? Shut up, extras! Bakugo roared, small explosions popping in his palms. I aced the mock exams. I'm the only one here with a shot at UA High. I'm gonna surpass All Might and become the top hero. My name will be in the history books. He stood up on his desk, basking in his own glory. Oh, that's right, the teacher said, checking his clipboard. Bakugo is aiming for UA. The class gasped. UA was the national barrier. The acceptance rate was fractional. It was the Olympus of Heroes Society. And the teacher continued, his eyes drifting to the back of the room. It looks like Midoriya is applying too. The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't the silence of mockery. In a normal timeline, this would be the moment the class laughed. They would point at the quirkless boy and jeer at his delusion. But in this timeline, at Aldera Junior High, nobody laughed at Izuku Midoriya. Heads turned slowly, fearfully, toward the back corner. Izuku was calmly sipping his tea. He lowered the cup, sensing the collective gaze. He blinked, his large green eyes reflecting the fluorescent lights with an unsettling clarity. Is there a discrepancy with my application, sensei? Izuku asked. His voice was polite, high-pitched, and laced with a terrifying calm. And no. The teacher stammered quickly. Not at all, Midoriya. It's just, the general studies course is very competitive, and I am applying for the hero course, Izuku corrected. A pin drop could have been heard. Bakugo froze on top of his desk. His shoulders began to shake. Not with laughter, but with a simmering, confused rage. He turned slowly to face Izuku. Deku. Bakugo growled. Izuku met his gaze. He didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He simply raised an eyebrow. Yes, Katsuki? You. Bakugo's hand smoked. You think you can compete with me? You're quirkless. You're nothing. You think you can just walk into UA without a quirk? Izuku set his cup down. He sighed, a long, weary exhalation that suggested he was dealing with a particularly slow toddler rather than a peer. Katsuki, Izuku said, standing up. The students in the desk surrounding Izuku immediately scrambled away, dragging their chairs with them to create a perimeter of safety. Let us analyze your statement, Izuku began, clasping his hands behind his back and stepping into the aisle. You equate quirk with heroism, a common fallacy rooted in the societal paradigm shift of the last century. However, history is replete with heroes who possessed no meta abilities. Police officers, firefighters, doctors. They save lives daily without the need to generate nitroglycerin from their sweat glands. That's not the same and you know it. Bakugo yelled, jumping down from his desk. I'm talking about fighting villains. I'm talking about power. Power, Izuku repeated, testing the word. You define power as destructive output. That is quaint. Izuku took a step forward. Bakugo took a reflexive half-step back, then caught himself and growled, planting his feet. You have a powerful quirk, Katsuki, Izuku conceded, tilting his head. Explosion. Versatile. High offensive capability. Good mobility if utilized for propulsion. However, Izuku's eyes seemed to dilate. the pupils expanding until the green irises were thin rings of emerald fire. You have significant drawbacks. Cold weather inhibits your sweat production, rendering you less effective in winter months. Prolonged usage places excessive strain on your deltoids and wrists, leading to a high probability of early-onset arthritis or carpal tunnel syndrome by age 30. Furthermore, your reliance on your quirk has stunted your tactical development. You approach every problem as a nail because you are a hammer. Shut up! Bakugo screamed, sparks flying. I'll blow you to bits. And there, Izuku pointed a finger, is your fatal flaw. Emotional volatility. You perceive analysis as an attack. You perceive calmness as arrogance. If a villain were to taunt you on the field, you would abandon the objective to pursue a personal vendetta. You are easily baited. You are easily manipulated. Izuku smiled. It was the smile of the high-spec principal, a smile that had once made hardened pro-heroes sweat during budget meetings. You claim you will surpass All Might, Izuku said softly. But All Might saves people with a smile. You save people while screaming at them to die. You are not a hero, Katsuki. You are a delinquent with a license to assault people. Yui will not crown you king. They will either break you, or expel you. Bakugo stood trembling. His hands were popping, but he didn't attack. He couldn't. It wasn't that he couldn't physically hit Izuku. It was that every time he had tried in the last few years, Izuku had dismantled him, not with fists, but with words, with traps, with public humiliation so severe it left Bakugo awake at night questioning his own existence. Izuku was a ghost Bakugo couldn't blast away. Now, Izuku said, turning back to his desk and sitting down. If you are quite finished posturing, I believe we were discussing career paths. I intend to revolutionize the hero industry through the application of logic and strategy. You intend to hit things very hard. I wish us both the best of luck. He picked up his tea. Sensei, Izuku called out to the frozen teacher. Please continue. We are burning valuable instructional time. The teacher gulped. All right. Everyone, sit down. Bakugo sank into his chair. He didn't look back. He stared at his hands, his teeth grinding together so hard his jaw clicked. The lunchroom dossiers. Lunch at Aldera was usually a chaotic affair, but Izuku Midoriya ate alone. He sat at a table in the corner of the cafeteria or, weather permitting, outside under a tree. Today, he chose the classroom, as the noise levels in the cafeteria exceeded his tolerance for sensory input. On his desk lay a bento box prepared by Inko, featuring grilled salmon, strictly portioned rice, and pickled vegetables rich in electrolytes, and notebook number 13, Hero Analysis for the Future. The title was misleading. It looked like a child's scribble book. The contents, however, were enough to warrant a visit from the Public Safety Commission. Izuku uncapped his pen. He was currently reviewing the morning's news feed on his phone. Incident, MT Lady Debut. Villain, Giant Purse Snatcher. Canyon Cannon, Izuku muttered, sketching a diagram of the kick. Inefficient. She destroyed 2 lanes of traffic and a takoyaki stand to stop a petty thief. The repair costs will exceed the value of the stolen item by a factor of 400. Net loss for the city. He wrote rapidly, the pen scratching against the paper. Subject, MT Lady Takayama Yu. Quirk, Gigantification. Psychological assessment, narcissistic tendencies. High desire for media attention. Likely to prioritize flashy takedowns over civilian safety protocols. Weakness, narrow streets. Power lines. PR scandals. Neutralization strategy. Lure into a dense urban canyon. Utilize tripwires or high-tensile bonding agents at ankle level. Gravity is her enemy. He tapped the page. She needs a PR manager who can curb her impulses, he mused. Or a sidekick who specializes in crowd control and damage mitigation. Currently, she is a liability. He flipped to another page. Subject, Kamui Woods, Nishiya Shinji. Quirk Arbor. Analysis, promising. Conscientious. However, his lacquered chain prison takes 4.5 seconds to fully deploy. A villain with high-speed mobility could evade it easily. Recommendation, preemptive binding. Use of environmental constraints. Izuku sighed, closing the notebook. So much raw talent, he whispered to the empty room. So little application of intellect. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. For 10 years, he had lived as Izuku Midoriya. The memories of Nezu were fully integrated now. He no longer felt like two people. He was a synthesis. He had Nezu's intellect, his memories, his penchant for tea and chaos. But he had Izuku's heart. He had Izuku's human emotions, which were, frankly, overwhelming at times. As Nezu, he had cared for the students, but from a distance. He was a creature apart. As Izuku, he felt the burning desire to be in the mix. To protect. To save. But this body. Izuku looked at his hand. He clenched it into a fist. He had trained. Oh, how he had trained. Under the loose, confused supervision of All Might, who Izuku met with once a week for tea and strategy, he had pushed his human vessel to its absolute limit. He could run a sub-5-minute mile. He could deadlift twice his body weight. He knew Judo, Aikido, and Krav Maga, but he was still just a human. If a villain shot him, he would bleed. If a building fell on him, he would break. I miss my fur, he lamented quietly. I miss my claws. I miss being small enough to fit in a ventilation shaft without dislocating my shoulder. He needed an edge. Intellect was his weapon, yes. But in a world of gods and monsters, intellect needed a delivery system. He thought about the entrance exam for UA. The practical exam, he murmured. Robots. It has always been robots. I told the board for years that robots favor telekinetic and emitter types, disadvantaging mental quirks and stealth specialists. They never listened. Robots are cost-effective, they said. Robots look good on camera, they said. He smiled thinly. Well, if they want to use robots, I shall treat them as machines. Machines have schematics. Machines have off switches. Machines can be hacked. He checked his watch. Lunch was ending. He packed his bento with military precision. Soon, he promised himself. 10 months until the exam. 10 months to finalize the preparations. I will not just pass. I will dismantle their tests so thoroughly they will have to rewrite the curriculum. The koi pond incident. The final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. Izuku packed his bag. He slid notebook number 13 into the main compartment. Hey, Deku! Izuku didn't sigh, but he thought about it. He zipped his bag and turned around. Bakugo stood there, flanked by his 2 lackeys. The lackeys looked nervous. They knew better than to provoke the green-haired boy, but they were more afraid of Bakugo. We're not done talking, Bakugo snarled. I was under the impression we were, Izuku said, slinging his backpack over one shoulder. I have a schedule to keep, Katsuki. There is a sale on imported tea leaves at the market in the next district. Ignore the tea. Bakugo slammed his hand onto Izuku's desk. You're really doing it? You're really applying to UA? We established this morning, Izuku said. Short-term memory loss is concerning. Have you been concussed recently? Bakugo grabbed the strap of Izuku's backpack. Don't mock me. You're just a pebble. A quirkless, useless pebble. You're gonna die in the exam. The robots will crush you. I appreciate your concern for my safety, Izuku said dryly. Now unhand me. Or what? Bakugo challenged. You gonna analyze me to death? Bakugo snatched the notebook out of Izuku's bag before he could react. He held it up. Hero analysis for the future? You really are a creep. Stalking heroes. Writing down their secrets. It is open source intelligence gathering, Izuku corrected. Give it back. I don't think I will. Bakugo slapped the notebook between his palms. Boom! An explosion charred the cover. The notebook smoked. Bakugo tossed it out the open window. Izuku watched it fall. It splashed into the koi pond below. For a moment, the room was silent. Izuku looked at the window. Then he looked at Bakugo. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. That was property damage, Izuku said. His voice was devoid of emotion. It was the voice of a judge reading a death sentence. So what? Bakugo sneered. Stop dreaming, Deku. Consider that a favor. I'm saving you from getting killed. Bakugo leaned in close, a cruel smirk on his face. You know, if you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it. The lackeys snickered. Take a swan dive off the roof, Bakugo said, and pray for a quirk in your next life. The silence that followed was heavy. heavy and suffocating. Izuku didn't react with anger. He didn't cry. He simply stared at Bakugo. He stared until Bakugo's smirk faltered. He stared until Bakugo took a step back. Katsuki, Izuku said. He walked forward. Bakugo, instinctively, retreated until his back hit the teacher's podium. Do you have any idea, Izuku whispered, what the legal ramifications of that statement are? Ha? Article 202 of the Penal Code, Izuku recited, his eyes unblinking. Inducing or aiding suicide. Punishable by imprisonment for not less than 6 months and not more than 7 years. Even if I did not follow through, the solicitation of suicide is a severe offense, especially for a minor aspiring to a government-sanctioned hero license. Izuku leaned in, invading Bakugo's personal space. If I were to record that statement, and who is to say I didn't, and submit it to UA admissions, your application would be shredded before it even reached the grading committee. You would be blacklisted. No hero school in the country would take a liability who encourages classmates to kill themselves. Bakugo went pale. You want to be the #1 hero? Izuku asked, tilting his head. You want to surpass All Might? All Might inspires hope. You inspire fear. And let me tell you something, Katsuki. Izuku's shadow stretched long across the floor, distorted and monstrous. If you ever say something like that to anyone else ever again, I will personally ensure that the only career available to you is cleaning the sewers of Mizutafu. Do I make myself clear? Bakugo couldn't breathe. He nodded, a jerky, terrified motion. Good, Izuku said, stepping back. The dark aura vanished instantly. He adjusted his backpack. Have a pleasant afternoon. Izuku walked out of the classroom. Bakugo slid down to the floor, clutching his chest, gasping for air. What the hell? One of the lackeys whispered. Is that guy really quirkless? Bakugo didn't answer. He just stared at the door, his hands trembling uncontrollably. The calculated risk. Izuku walked down to the courtyard. He retrieved his notebook from the koi pond. Fish food, he muttered, shaking the water off. Fortunately, the ink is waterproof. I learned that lesson when I was 6. He inspected the damage. Burned cover. Recoverable. It adds character. He began his walk home. The path he took was not random. Izuku Midoriya did nothing randomly. He walked through a residential district, then cut toward a shopping arcade, and finally, toward a specific underpass. He checked his watch. 4:14 p.m. According to the police scanner traffic I intercepted earlier, Izuku muttered, the sludge villain committed a robbery 20 minutes ago. Pursuit is active. The villain is fluid, capable of navigating sewer systems. Based on the drainage layout of this district, the most logical escape route toward the harbor is. He looked up at the dark tunnel ahead. This underpass. He stopped. This was dangerous. This was illogical. A civilian should evacuate, but Izuku needed data. I have trained my body for 6 years, he thought. I can bench press 100 kilograms. I have reflexes honed by dodging Katsuki's explosions. But I have never been in a life-or-death struggle with a villain. He clenched his fists. I need to know. I need to know if this vessel can withstand the pressure. And, he glanced around. If my calculations are correct, All Might is in pursuit. He is likely limited by his time constraint, which means he is pushing his speed. He should be approximately 2 minutes behind the villain. Izuku walked into the tunnel. He hummed a tune, the UA school anthem. Shadows move. A manhole cover rattled behind him. Izuku stopped. He didn't turn around immediately. He listened. The sound of wet, viscous fluid sliding against concrete. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. A gurgling voice hissed. Perfect. Izuku spun around. The sludge villain rose from the grate. A towering mass of sewage and malice. Eyes floated in the muck, frantic and cruel. Don't worry, kid, the villain sneered. I'm just going to take over your body. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Then it'll be all over. Izuku looked at the villain. He didn't scream. Analysis. His mind fired instantly. Fluid body. No solid mass to strike. Vulnerability, eyes and mouth. Viscosity suggests a weakness to absorbance or rapid temperature changes. Intent, possession/hostage. 45 seconds? Izuku asked calmly. That is an agonizingly long time for asphyxiation. You really should work on your efficiency. The villain paused. What? Also, Izuku continued, dropping his backpack, you smell like sulfur and unwashed socks. Hygiene is important, even for criminals. Die, you brat! The villain lunged. Izuku moved. He didn't run away. He ran at the villain. The villain was expecting fear. He was expecting flight. He wasn't expecting a middle schooler to slide under his grasp like a baseball player stealing home. Izuku slid on his knees, passing under the initial wave of sludge. He popped up behind the main mass. Physical attacks are useless, Izuku noted. But sensory overload works on all biological entities. Izuku grabbed a handful of dirt and gravel from the edge of the tunnel floor. He spun around. The villain turned to grab him. Pocket sand! Izuku yelled, a classic, if undignified, maneuver. He hurled the debris with pinpoint accuracy at the villain's floating eyes. Arg! The villain flinched, the sludge recoiling. Target acquired, Izuku muttered. He saw the villain's mouth, or what passed for a mouth, gasping. Izuku grabbed his heavy, hardcover math textbook from his bag. Knowledge is power, Izuku quipped. He threw the book. It spun like a discus. Thwack! It hit the villain squarely in the eye. You little! The villain roared, abandoning subtlety. He expanded, filling the tunnel. Izuku backed up. Space limited. No escape route. Defensive options exhausted. All Might arrival estimated in 10 seconds. The sludge crashed down on him. Izuku raised his arms to protect his airway, but the fluid forced its way in. It was cold, slimy, and suffocating. It entered his nose, his mouth. Panic. The human brain screamed. I can't breathe. I'm dying. But the Nezu brain took over, heart rate decreasing to conserve oxygen. Relax the throat muscles to prevent tearing. Claw at the fluid. Create an air pocket. Izuku's fingers dug into the sludge. He didn't flail. He searched. He found the eye again. He dug his nails in. Aya! The villain screamed, loosening his grip slightly. It was just enough. Clang. The manhole cover flew into the air. Have no fear. The voice boomed through the tunnel, shaking dust from the ceiling. For I am here. All Might stood at the entrance. He wasn't smiling. He was furious. He saw the boy trapped in the sludge. He saw the boy fighting back, not giving up. Texas. Smash! The wind pressure was immense. It was a hurricane condensed into a fist. The sludge villain was vaporized, not killed, but scattered into 1,000 harmless droplets painting the tunnel walls. Izuku was blown back. He tumbled across the concrete, rolling to disperse the momentum, and came to a stop. He coughed, retching up sludge. Young man! All Might rushed over. Are you all right? I apologize. I got distracted by the complex sewer system and lost track of time. Izuku wiped his mouth. He looked up at the towering hero. He blinked. Lung injury, Izuku wheezed, pointing a shaking finger at All Might's chest. You pushed it. You're steaming. All Might froze. What? You're at your limit. Izuku coughed again, standing up on shaky legs. You have, maybe 30 seconds before you deflate. All Might looked panicked. Young man, I don't know what you're. Save the denial, Izuku interrupted, dusting off his uniform. We discussed this last Tuesday over tea. Your time limit has decreased by 12 seconds this month alone. It is a statistically significant regression. All Might slumped. You really are terrifying, Midoriya Shonen. I am pragmatic, Izuku said. He looked at the splattered villain. Did you bring a containment unit? An empty soda bottle will suffice. All Might blinked. Yes. I have too. As All Might scrambled to scoop up the unconscious sludge villain into plastic bottles, Izuku retrieved his backpack. That was unpleasant, Izuku muttered. But informative. My lung capacity is insufficient. I need to increase cardio. You fought back, All Might said, screwing the cap on the bottle. He looked at Izuku with a mixture of pride and concern. You didn't run. You analyzed his weakness and attacked the eyes. It was the only logical course of action, Izuku said. Running would have exposed my back. Creating a distraction bought me time. You have the heart of a hero, All Might said softly. Izuku looked at his hands. They were trembling slightly. I have the mind of a strategist, Izuku corrected. The heart is a biological pump. And right now, mine is beating at 160 beats per minute. I need to sit down. The roof and the reality check. They moved to a nearby rooftop for privacy. As predicted, All Might poofed into his skeletal form the moment they landed. Toshinori Yagi coughed, wiping blood from his mouth. I'm getting worse, Toshinori admitted, leaning against the railing. Yes, Izuku said. He was sitting on a ventilation unit, swinging his legs. The decline is exponential. At this rate, you will be unable to maintain muscle form for more than an hour a day by the end of the year, Toshinori sighed. You're brutal, kid. I am honest, Izuku said. And honestly? You need a successor. Toshinori looked at the sunset. I know. I've been looking. Night Eye wants me to meet a student at UA. A third-year named Togata. Mirio Togata, Izuku nodded. Quirk, permeation. Excellent physical stats. Optimistic personality. A solid candidate. But? Toshinori asked, sensing the hesitation. But he is already a complete product, Izuku said. He will be a great hero with or without your power. One for all, it is a power that stockpiles. It needs a vessel that can grow with it. Someone who starts from zero. Toshinori looked at Izuku. Someone like you? Izuku laughed. It was a dry, raspy sound. Me? No. I am quirkless, remember? My body could not handle the stress of your power without exploding. Actually, Toshinori said, that's a misconception. One for all can be given to anyone. But you're right. It requires a vessel prepared for it. He looked at Izuku intensely. You have the mind, Midoriya. You have the spirit. But do you want the power? Izuku stopped swinging his legs. He looked at the city below. Did he? As Nezu, he had a quirk. High specs. It was a mutation that gave him intelligence. It didn't give him strength. He had relied on others to do the fighting. He had relied on All Might. But now, he was human. He was fragile. If he had one for all, high specs one for all. The calculation ran through his mind in a nanosecond. Super strength, super processing speed. The ability to execute plans with 100% efficiency. No need for sidekicks. No need to wait for others. It was intoxicating. Izuku began. Boom. An explosion rocked the city. A plume of black smoke rose from the shopping district. The same district Izuku had just left. Izuku stood up instantly. That direction, Izuku said. That's the Tatooine shopping district. The villain, Toshinori gasped, patting his pocket. The bottles, they were gone. I must have dropped them when we jumped, Toshinori said, horrified. I have to go. He tried to buff up, but he spat blood and collapsed. Damn it. I'm over the limit. Izuku looked at the smoke. He looked at All Might. Stay here, Izuku commanded. Midoriya, wait. It's too dangerous. Izuku was already at the door to the stairs. I am just going to observe, Izuku lied. I need to calculate the collateral damage. He ran down the stairs. Calculation. Villain escaped. Explosions indicate a hostage with a volatile quirk. Location, narrow streets. High flammability. Hero response time, estimated 3 minutes. Current heroes on patrol, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady. Matchup, unfavorable. Sludge is immune to physical trauma. Wood is weak to fire. Giant size is prohibited in narrow alleys. They can handle it, Izuku whispered, bursting out onto the street. They don't have the matchup. He ran. The fire and the fury. The scene was hell. Flames roared, licking the sides of buildings. The sludge villain had taken a new hostage. He was barricaded in an alleyway, surrounded by a ring of fire that kept the heroes at bay. Don't come any closer. The villain roared. I'll snap his neck. In the center of the sludge, a face struggled for air. Explosions popped from his hands, feeding the fire. Katsuki Bikugo. Izuku arrived at the police barricade. He ducked under the tape. Hey! Kid! Get back! Death Arms shouted. Izuku ignored him. He scanned the scene. Death Arms, punching uselessly at the fluid. Ineffective. Kamui Woods, rescuing civilians from the fire. Good prioritization, but cannot engage target. Empty lady, stuck outside the alley. Useless. And the pros were just standing there. Why aren't they moving? Izuku hissed. They are waiting for a quirk with the right compatibility. They are paralyzed by the lack of an easy solution. He looked at Bakugo. Bakugo's eyes were wide, filled with terror. He was suffocating. He looked at the crowd, pleading for help, and he saw Izuku. Their eyes locked. Izuku didn't think. The Nezu part of his brain, the part that calculated risk and reward, that valued self-preservation, went silent. The Izuku part, the human part, the hero part, screamed go. Izuku bolted. Stop him! The heroes yelled. Izuku didn't stop. He sprinted into the fire. Analyze. 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 The villain is distracted by the heroes. He is focusing his mass on restraining Katsuki. His eyes are exposed. Izuku ripped his backpack off while running. Take this. He swung the bag by the strap and hurled it. It flew through the air, the heavy textbooks inside acting as a projectile. Smack. The bag hit the villain's eye. Again. Gah! Not you again! The villain shrieked. The grip loosened. Bakugo gasped, taking in a breath of air. Izuku slid to a halt in front of the sludge. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't have a quirk. He reached in. He grabbed Bakugo's collar. Katsuki! Izuku yelled. Stop exploding! You're feeding the fire and creating a smokescreen for him. Compress the explosion. Aim it behind you, Deku? Bakugo wheezed. What the hell are you doing here? Saving your life, you incompetent idiot! Izuku shouted, clawing at the sludge. Now do as I say. Create a focus blast to propel us backward. I can't. Do it. Izuku's voice cracked with authority. Unless you want to be known as the boy who was killed by sewage, rage flared in Bakugo's eyes. Rage at the villain. Rage at his own weakness. Rage at Deku looking down on him again. He screamed. He focused every ounce of nitroglycerin in his palms. He didn't just explode, he detonated. Boom! The force tore them free from the sludge. They flew backward, landing hard on the pavement away from the fire. No! The villain surged forward, a tidal wave of muck. I'll kill you both! Izuku scrambled up, dragging Bakugo. We need cover! There was no cover. The villain loomed over them, a hammer of death about to fall. Izuku stood in front of Bakugo. He raised his arms. It was a futile gesture. He knew the math. Mass x acceleration equals death. I calculated wrong, Izuku thought. I misjudged the variable of my own stupidity. But he didn't regret it. Detroit. The wind changed. The fire was snuffed out in an instant. A massive hand slammed into the sludge villain, scattering him to the four winds. The air pressure punched a hole in the clouds above, causing rain to fall instantly. Smash! All Might stood there, steam pouring off his body. He had forced himself past the limit. He looked back at Izuku and Bakugo. He gave a thumbs up, and then, silently, he began to fall. The aftermath was chaotic. The heroes scolded Izuku. That was reckless! You could have gotten yourself killed! Death Arms yelled. Izuku stood there, wiping soot from his face. He listened to the lecture with a blank expression. Are you finished? Izuku asked when Death Arms paused for breath. What? You are scolding me for acting, Izuku said, his voice cold. Yet you stood there for 5 minutes watching a child suffocate because you decided the situation was inconvenient for your quirks. I identified a weakness. I exploited it. I extracted the hostage. If I had not acted, Katsuki would be dead by now. He stared Death Arms in the eye. Do not mistake your cowardice for prudence, hero. He walked away. The pros were left stunned. Later, as the sun set, Izuku walked home. He was tired. His uniform was ruined. He needed a bath and a very strong cup of Earl Grey. Deku! Izuku stopped. He didn't turn around. Bakugo ran up to him, panting. He looked furious, humiliated, and confused. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo yelled. And you didn't save me. I did it myself. Don't look down on me. You're still a quirkless nothing. Bakugo turned and stomped away. Izuku watched him go. He is traumatized, Izuku diagnosed softly. His ego has fractured. He will either rebuild it stronger or crumble. Interesting. I am here. All Might slid out from an alleyway in his skinny form. Midoriya Shonen, Yagi-san, Izuku nodded. You should be in the hospital. I will go. But first. Tashinori walked over. He looked at the boy. I saw what you did. You jumped in when everyone else hesitated. You lectured the pros. You saved young Bakugo. It was logical, Izuku said. The pros were stagnating. No, All Might smiled. It was heroic. You moved before you could think. That is the essence of a hero. All Might held out his hand. I have made my decision. The investigation into other candidates is over. I want you to inherit my power. Izuku looked at the hand. The hand of the strongest man in the world. He thought about his plans. He thought about the board of directors. He thought about the broken system. One for all, Izuku whispered. The power to smash through obstacles. He looked up at All Might. A slow, terrifying grin spread across Izuku's face. It was the grin of a principal who had just secured limitless funding. High specs plus one for all, Izuku said. Finally. A vessel worthy of my intellect. He took All Might's hand. I accept. But be warned, Yagi-san. I am going to make some changes to how things are done. All Might shivered, a sudden chill running down his spine. Changes? Oh yes, Izuku said, his eyes glowing in the twilight. First, we are going to clean that beach. But we are not going to do it by hand. That would be tedious. I have some blueprints to draw up. The anatomy of a miracle. The streetlights flickered, casting long, oscillating shadows against the brickwork of the alley. The smell of rain and ozone hung heavy in the air, the after-effect of All Might's weather-altering punch. Tashinori Yagi stood in his skeletal form, a gaunt scarecrow of a man, offering the world to a middle schooler. I want you to inherit my power, he had said. For most children, this would be the moment of emotional climax. Tears would flow. Knees would buckle. The sheer weight of the destiny being handed down would crush their composure. Izuku Midoriya, however, did not cry. He did not fall to his knees. He tilted his head to the left, his green eyes narrowing as if he were inspecting a diamond for flaws under a jeweler's loupe. Inherit, Izuku repeated, testing the word on his tongue. He stepped closer to the pro-hero, invading his personal space with the clinical detachment of a coroner. You are speaking of a biological transfer of the meta-ability factor. A quirk transplant. Tashinori blinked, taken aback by the lack of all. Well, yes. Essentially. It is a sacred torch passed down from generation to generation. It is called one for all, Izuku muttered. He began to pace in a tight circle around All Might, muttering rapidly. A stockpiling quirk. That explains the variable power output. It explains why your strength defies standard biometric limitations. You aren't generating force, you are discharging stored kinetic energy accumulated over decades. Fascinating. It violates the law of conservation of energy unless the quirk itself acts as a conduit to an external dimension, or metabolic battery. He stopped in front of Tashinori and pointed a finger at the hero's chest. But a transfer? That suggests the quirk factor is not bound to the DNA in a traditional sense. It's parasitic, or rather, symbiotic. It retains the genetic imprints of previous hosts. Izuku's eyes gleamed. It is a haunting. You are asking me to become a vessel for ghosts. Tashinori's sweat dropped. That is a very grim way of putting it, Midoriya Shonen. But yes, it cultivates power. And I believe you are the one to take it next. Izuku stopped pacing. He looked at his own hands, small, scarred from his experiments, callous from holding pens and screwdrivers. In his past life, Nezu had been a unique case. An animal with a quirk. He had been experimented on, tortured, and then liberated. He had risen to the top of the educational world through sheer, terrifying intellect. But he had always hit a wall, the physical wall. Nezu could plan a battle, but he couldn't fight it. He could analyze a villain, but he couldn't apprehend them. He had always relied on All Might. He had been the brain. All Might had been the muscle. Now, the muscle was offering the brain the gun. High specs, Izuku whispered, a hungry smile touching his lips. My mind processes information at a speed roughly 300 times faster than the average human. I can calculate the trajectory of a falling beam, the tensile strength of a villain's armor, and the psychological breaking point of a hostage-taker in a microsecond. He looked up at All Might. But this body is slow. My nerves fire instantly, but my muscles lag. It is like trying to run a supercomputer on a dial-up connection. He clenched his fist. If I accept this, if I combine my processing speed with your kinetic output, I will not just be a hero. I will be the apex. I will be efficiency personified. Toshinori swallowed nervously. The boy didn't look like a fanboy receiving a gift. He looked like a CEO acquiring a rival company. So, Toshinori asked tentatively. Is that a yes? It is a conditional yes, Izuku said sharply. Conditional? I accept the power, Izuku said. But I do not accept your methods. I have watched you for years, Yagi-san. You are a brilliant symbol, but you are a chaotic element. You rush in. You create wind pressure that shatters windows. You prioritize brute force over containment. Izuku crossed his arms. If I take this power, I will use it my way. I will not be a pillar of peace that holds up the sky until it cracks. I will be the architect who reinforces the foundation so the sky doesn't fall in the first place. All Might stared at the boy. He felt a strange mixture of intimidation and relief. He had been looking for a successor who shared his heart. He found one who shared his heart, but brought a much, much bigger brain. I think All Might laughed, a spray of blood escaping his lips. That is exactly what the world needs. Good, Izuku nodded. Now, regarding the transfer method. I assume it requires the ingestion of genetic material? All Might choked. How did you know? Deduction. Blood transfusion is too medically complex for a street transfer. Saliva is inefficient. Hair or skin cells are the most logical vectors. Izuku wrinkled his nose. I hope you wash your hair regularly. I have high standards for what I consume. The contract of the beach. The next morning, 5 a.m. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was shrouded in a pre-dawn mist. The mountains of trash loomed like jagged teeth against the gray sky. Toshinori Yagi stood in his tracksuit, striking a classic pose atop a pile of rusted refrigerators. Good morning, Midoriya Shonin. He bellowed, transforming into his buff form for a brief second before deflating back to skeletal status. Welcome to your hero academia. This beach used to be a beautiful park, but now, it is an illegal dumping ground due to the currents bringing drift debris and local negligence, Izuku finished. He walked onto the sand. He was wearing a green tracksuit that was perfectly ironed. He carried a clipboard and a thermos. Exactly, Toshinori said. To receive one for all, your body must be prepared. If you took it now, your limbs would explode, a catastrophic failure of the skeletal structure due to kinetic overload, Izuku noted, writing it down. Noted. Avoid exploding. So, Toshinori pointed to a massive refrigerator. Your mission is to clean this entire beach. You have 10 months until the UA entrance exam. You will haul this trash to the recycling center. It will build your back, your legs, and your spirit. All Might waited for the boy to look daunted. He waited for the that's impossible. Izuku stared at the refrigerator. Then he looked at the miles of trash. No, Izuku said. All Might froze. No, inefficient, Izuku said, tapping his pen against the clipboard. Manually hauling large appliances is a recipe for spinal herniation, not muscle growth. Furthermore, moving trash from point A to point B is simple labor. It does not stimulate the mind. But the training. Yagi-san, Izuku sighed, walking over to a flat rock and setting down his thermos. Please sit. We need to review the syllabus. I'm the teacher, All Might squeaked. You are the donor, Izuku corrected. I am the project manager. Izuku pulled a large roll of blueprints from his backpack and spread them out on the sand. This, Izuku pointed, is the schematics for the automated debris removal and sorting unit, Mark II. Or, as I call it, the crab. All Might squinted at the drawing. It looked like a nightmare machine made of car engines and hydraulic pistons. You want to build a robot? I want to engineer a solution, Izuku said. Think, Yagi-san. What does a hero do? A hero solves problems. Punching is a last resort. If I spend 10 months dragging tires, I will become a strong idiot. If I spend 10 months building complex machinery from scrap, I will become a strong genius. But what about the physical training? All Might asked, genuinely concerned. Have you ever tried to lift a V8 engine block out of a rusted truck chassis without a crane? Izuku asked, raising an eyebrow. Have you ever tried to weld a suspension bridge frame while hanging upside down? The physical exertion required to scavenge, dismantle, and reconstruct this trash into functioning tech will exceed your refrigerator dragging plan by a factor of 3. Izuku stood up and gestured to the trash piles. This is not garbage, Yagi-san. This is a resource mine. Copper, steel, rare earth magnets in the electronics. I will clean the beach, yes, but I will also strip it for parts, build my machines, and sell the refined scrap to fund my nutritional needs. We are not just training muscles. We are training logistics, engineering, and economics. All Might looked at the blueprints. He looked at the small boy with the terrifyingly intense eyes. You're going to turn the beach cleanup into a manufacturing plant? Precisely, Izuku smiled. Now grab that wrench. I need you to hold the manifold while I calibrate the torque. Yes, sir, All Might said instinctively. The evolution of the beast. Month 1, the scavenger phase. The first month was hell, but not the kind All Might had expected. Izuku Midoriya did not run along the waterline screaming at the sunset. Instead, he crawled through the trash heaps like a feral creature. He wore heavy welding gloves and goggles. He moved with a disturbing fluidity. Copper wire, Izuku muttered, ripping a cable out of a rotting wall of electronics. Oxidized, but salvageable. His body was weak. He struggled to pull the alternator out of a sedan. He groaned, his muscles shaking, sweat pouring down his face. Pull! All Might cheered from the sidelines. Use your legs! I am applying torque! Izuku grunted. With a scream of effort, he ripped the part free. He fell backward into the sand, panting. Good, Izuku wheezed. That was 15 kilograms of resistance. Isolate the bicep. Acceptable. He didn't rest. He dragged the part to his workshop, a clearing he had leveled. Every night, Izuku went home bruised, cut, and covered in grease. Inko would fuss over him, but Izuku would just smile tiredly. I am building the future, mother, he would say, devouring 3 bowls of katsudon and a protein shake that tasted like chalk. Also, our stock in the recycling firm is up 12%. Month 3. The mechanical phase. The beach began to change. Strange structures rose from the sand. A crane made of rebar and car axles. A hydraulic press powered by a salvage truck engine. Izuku was changing too. The baby fat was melting away, replaced by lean, wiry muscle. His hands were rougher. His grip was iron. Midoriya Shonen, All Might said one afternoon, watching Izuku weld a joint on a massive metallic claw. You're getting stronger. Izuku flipped his welding mask up. His face was smudged with soot. My BMI is optimal, Izuku reported. However, my stamina is still lacking. I need to increase cardiovascular load. Run? All Might suggested hopefully. No, Izuku said. I will power the generator manually. He pointed to a stationary bike he had rigged up to a massive turbine system. To charge the batteries for the welding arc, I must pedal at a resistance level equivalent to cycling up Mount Fuji. I will do this for 2 hours every evening while listening to audiobooks on quark theory. All Might stared at the torture device. You really don't like doing things the easy way, do you? The easy way produces average results, Izuku said, locking his mask back down. I do not aim for average. Month 6, the tea break. It was a rare moment of stillness. The sun was setting, painting the ocean in hues of orange and purple. Half the beach was clear. The other half was dominated by Izuku's machines. The crab, a 6-legged walker made of scrap metal, was autonomously sorting plastic bottles into a bin. Izuku sat on a cooler, holding a delicate porcelain cup. Yagi-san, Izuku said softly. All Might sat beside him on a tire. Yes, young Midoriya? Why did you choose me? All Might looked at the boy. He thought about the day with the sludge villain. Because you moved, All Might said. When everyone else was analyzing the risk, you acted. You have the spirit of self-sacrifice. Izuku took a sip of tea. He closed his eyes. Self-sacrifice is illogical, Izuku said. It is a waste of resources. If I die saving one person, I cannot save thousands later. That's one way to look at it. All Might's sweat dropped. But Izuku opened his eyes, looking at his own reflection in the tea. I understand the impulse. That day, with Katsuki, I did not calculate. My body simply moved. He frowned, as if the memory was a math problem he couldn't solve. It was terrifying. It was inefficient. And it was, he looked at All Might, exhilarating. All Might grinned. That is the heart, my boy. Logic is the steering wheel, but passion is the engine. You need both. Izuku considered this. He nodded slowly. Passion as a fuel source, he mused. High volatility, but high output. I will incorporate this variable into my calculations. You treat everything like a math problem, All Might laughed. Because everything is a math problem, Izuku said, finishing his tea. Now get up. The crab has jammed again, and I need you to lift the chassis while I realign the servo. Month 9, the sparring. You are telegraphing. Izuku ducked under All Might's slow-motion punch. He grabbed All Might's arm, used his momentum, and flipped the skeletal man into the sand. Oof. All Might landed with a thud. Dead, Izuku declared, standing over him. If I had a knife, the carotid artery would be severed. You're fast, All Might groaned, sitting up. And you fight dirty. There is no such thing as dirty, Izuku said, wiping sand from his cheek. There is only effective and ineffective. You rely on your size. I rely on your knees being bad. Izuku offered a hand to help him up. He was unrecognizable from the boy of 10 months ago. He wasn't bulky. He would never be a tank like All Might. He was a whip. Compact. Dense. Your martial arts are improving, All Might noted. I have analyzed the fighting styles of Eraserhead, Sir Naitai, and Mirko, Izuku said. I have synthesized a hybrid style focused on joint manipulation and center of gravity disruption. It is designed to neutralize opponents larger than myself. Perfect for one for All Might nodded. With the power boost, those throws will be devastating. That is the plan, Izuku said. He looked at the beach. It was almost empty. The sand was pristine white. The water sparkled, and in the center of the clean beach stood a massive pile of sorted scrap metal, worth a small fortune. We are ahead of schedule, Izuku noted. The day of reckoning, the morning of the exam. The sun rose on a completely transformed Dagoba beach. It was beautiful. The horizon stretched endlessly. Izuku stood atop the seawall. He wore his middle school uniform, but it fit differently now. His shoulders filled the fabric. His posture was commanding. All Might arrived, carrying a small box. You did it, All Might said, looking at the beach. I honestly didn't think you'd finish early. I optimized the workflow in month 7, Izuku said, checking his watch. We have 40 minutes before I must depart for the exam. Then it's time, All Might said. He opened the box. Inside was a single strand of golden hair. Izuku stared at it. Hair, Izuku deadpanned. It contains the DNA. All Might said heroically. Eat this. Izuku looked at the hair. He looked at All Might. He looked at the thermos of premium Darjeeling he was holding. This is dignified, Izuku sighed. It's the only way. Izuku took the hair. He held it up to the light. Keratin, he muttered. Indigestible. But the follicle cells. He dropped the hair into his teacup. He swirled it around. Bottoms up, Izuku whispered. He drank the tea in one gulp, swallowing the hair without chewing. He shuddered. Texture, 2 out of 10, Izuku critiqued. Flavor profile, metallic. Soapy. You'll feel it in a few hours, All Might said, beaming. Once it digests, the power will be yours. Izuku put the cap back on his thermos. He closed his eyes. He focused inward. He expected a surge. A spark. Nothing yet. Biological latency, Izuku noted. Expected. He turned to All Might and bowed deeply. Thank you, Yagi-san. For the opportunity. And for lifting the heavy things when my hydraulics failed. All Might choked up. Midoriya Shonen. Go! Show them that you are here. Izuku straightened up. He adjusted his backpack. I will show them, Izuku corrected, that logic has arrived. The gates of UA. The UA High School campus was a fortress of glass and steel. It was imposing, designed to intimidate. Izuku Midoriya stood at the main gate. He took a deep breath. Nostalgia. Memories flooded him. Memories of sitting in the principal's office at the top of the H structure. Memories of approving the budget for those very gates. Memories of sipping tea while watching students panic during exams. "I'm back," he whispered. He walked through the archway. "Out of my way, Deku!" Bakugo marched past him, shoving his shoulder. Bakugo looked tense. He had been training too, Izuku knew. But Bakugo's training was solitary and angry. "Good morning, Katsuki," Izuku said pleasantly. "Did you remember to hydrate? Stress induces dehydration." "Shut up!" Bakugo barked, storming ahead. Izuku chuckled. He took a step forward, and tripped. He had been so busy analyzing the architectural changes to the walkway that he missed the uneven paver. Balance lost. Center of gravity shifting forward. Calculation, impact with pavement inevitable. He braced for the fall. Suddenly he stopped. He was floating. "Whoa! Are you okay?" Izuku looked around. A girl with a round face and brown hair was touching his backpack. Uraraka Ochako. Quirk, zero gravity. Touch activation. Pads on fingertips. Nausea side effect. She placed him back on his feet and released the quirk. "It's bad luck to fall on the exam day," she chirped brightly. "I'm Uraraka Ochako." Izuku adjusted his jacket. He looked at her. "Midoriya Izuku," he replied. "And technically, tripping is a result of kinetic error, not luck. However, your reaction time was 0.4 seconds. Impressive." Uraraka blinked. Thanks? You released the gravity on my mass, but maintained my forward momentum, then corrected it," Izuku analyzed rapidly. "You have excellent spatial awareness. Good luck." He walked away, leaving a confused Uraraka behind. "What a weird boy," she muttered. The written exam, a formality. The written exam was a joke. Izuku sat in the large lecture hall. He flipped through the test booklet. Math. History. Hero law. Quirk theory. He finished the 3-hour exam in 45 minutes. He spent the remaining time correcting the grammar in the questions with a red pen he had brought specifically for this purpose. Question 14. Who is the hero that saved? Grammar error. Who refers to the subject. It should be formatted differently. He wrote a note in the margin. To the examiner, please update your syntax. This is an institution of higher learning, not a tabloid. He leaned back, sipping tea from a hidden flask, watching the other students sweat. The orientation. President Mike stood on the stage screaming, "Everybody say hey!" Silence. Tough crowd. President Mike shrugged. Izuku sat in the dark auditorium. Yamada Hizashi. Voice quirk. Loud. Needs to modulate his bass frequencies. The acoustics in this hall were not designed for 120 decibels. Mike explained the practical exam. Robots. 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers, and the 0-pointer. Mike shouted. "It's just an obstacle. Run away!" "Excuse me." A tall boy with glasses and engines in his cab stood up. "Tenya Ida, may I ask a question?" Ida shouted, chopping his hand. "There are 4 robots on the handout, but you only mentioned 3. If this is a printing error, it is a disgrace to UA." He turned and pointed at Izuku. "And you, the curly-haired student. You've been muttering this whole time. It's distracting. If you're here to mess around, leave." The auditorium went quiet. Everyone looked at Izuku. Izuku sighed. He stood up slowly. "First," Izuku said, his voice carrying clearly without shouting, "my muttering was subvocal. If you could hear it over President Mick's shouting, you likely have auditory hypersensitivity, which you should get checked." A few students snickered. "Second," Izuku continued, regarding the 4th robot. "If you had analyzed the silhouette on the handout, you would see it corresponds to the villain bot model used in the 20XX budget report, which was designed as a pure environmental hazard. It is obviously a gimmick to test flight or fight responses." Izuku adjusted his collar. "And finally, interrupting the presenter to grandstand about a printing error shows a lack of situational adaptability. Please sit down, examinee 7111. You are holding up the cue. Ida turned bright red. He sat down stiffly. Apologies. Present Mike whistled. Okay. Nice breakdown, listener. Yeah, the 0-pointer is just a hazard. Avoid it. Izuku sat back down. Robots, he thought. As I suspected. No biosignatures. No psychological complexity. He clenched his fist. He felt a bubbling heat in his stomach. The hair. It was digesting. One for All is coming online. Battle Center B. The massive gates of the testing ground loomed ahead. A crowd of nervous students gathered. Izuku stood at the front, stretching his calves. He wore a teal tracksuit now. He had opted for mobility over armor. He's the one who snapped at that guy earlier, someone whispered. Doesn't look like much. I heard he's quirkless. Izuku ignored them. He was scanning the gate mechanism. Hydraulic release. It will open in 3, 2, start. Present Mike yelled from the tower. There are no countdowns in real battles. The other students hesitated, confused. Izuku did not. The moment the gate cracked open, he exploded forward. He didn't use One for All yet. He used pure leg strength. He was a blur of teal, dashing into the city replica before the others even processed the command. Run! Someone yelled. The stampede began. The algorithm of destruction. Izuku turned a corner. A 1-pointer, a rolling drone with a target on its chest, locked onto him. Target acquired. Izuku didn't stop. He analyzed the drone. Single wheelbase. High center of gravity. Exposed wiring on the neck joint. He slid under the robot's grasping arm. He pulled a collapsible metal baton from his belt, a support item he had built himself. He jammed the baton into the exposed wiring. Sparks. The robot short-circuited and crashed into a wall. 1 point, Izuku counted. Inefficient. I need higher value targets. He felt the power inside him, One for All, humming like a live wire. It was terrifyingly vast. If he used it, he would break. Keep it contained, he told himself. Use it only if the math requires it. He rounded another corner. 3 2-pointers and a 3-pointer were clustered together. Jackpot. Izuku scanned the environment. A fire escape ladder hung loose above the robots. A water main cap was visible on the street. Plan. 1. Sever the ladder support. 2. Breach the water main to reduce friction. 3. Conduct electricity. Izuku grabbed a loose brick. He threw it with pinpoint accuracy, hitting the rusted bolt holding the ladder. The heavy metal ladder crashed down, crushing 2 of the 2-pointers instantly. 2 down. The 3-pointer turned, revving its saw blade. Izuku sprinted toward the water main. He jumped, driving his heel into the valve. It was rusted, stuck. Need more force. He tapped into One for All. Just a flicker. 1%. Power flows. Leg muscles engage. He stomped. Crack. The valve shattered. A geyser of high-pressure water erupted, spraying the 3-pointer. Water intake and cooling vents, Izuku noted. Thermal shock. The robot sputtered, steam hissing. It slowed down. Izuku ran past it, leaping onto its back. He found the emergency shut-off switch located under the shoulder plate. He knew it was there because he had memorized the blueprints of these robots years ago in his past life. He ripped the plate off and yanked the wires. The robot powered down. 6 points. He moved like a phantom. He didn't fight the robots. He dismantled them. He lured them into choke points. He caused them to shoot each other. He was a virus in the system. In the observation room, the judges watched the screens. Who is that kid in Center B? Midnight asked. He's not using a flashy quirk. Is it an intelligence quirk? He's dismantling them, Power Loader said, impressed. He knows the weak points. He's fighting like an engineer. Nezu, the current principal, or rather, the imposter sitting in the chair, sipped his tea. Note: in this FIC, Nezu is dead/reincarnated, so the principal is a human bureaucrat. Interesting, the principal said. But does he have firepower? The variable. The buzzer was nearing. Izuku had 45 points. Enough to pass, based on historical averages. He stood in the center of the fake city, panting slightly. One for All remained stable, he noted. I haven't needed to use more than a fraction for mobility. Then, the ground shook. Boom, boom, buildings crumbled. Dust filled the air. The 0-pointer rose. It was colossal. A skyscraper on treads. Its mere presence blocked out the sun. The other students screamed and ran. Run away! It's huge! Izuku stood his ground, calculating. Size, 100 meters. Mass, approximate 2,000 tons. Threat level high. Logic dictates retreat. 0 points means 0 value. He turned to leave. Oh wow! A voice. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Uraraka Ochako was trapped under rubble. The 0-pointer was looming over her, its massive tread about to crush the debris, and her logic. Someone else will save her. The teachers will intervene. Reality. The teachers are too far. The robot is too close. Izuku felt the heat in his stomach flare. It wasn't the quirk. It was anger. They built a machine that could actually kill a student? Incompetence. Negligence. And then, the hero instinct, the all-might infection, took over. Izuku didn't calculate the risk. He simply calculated the trajectory. He sprinted. One for all, he whispered. Full cal, no. Too weak. Focused output. He jumped. He channeled the power into his legs. 100%? No, his legs would vaporize. Limit it. 50%. Sacrifice the bone integrity for altitude. Smash. The pavement cracked. Izuku shot into the air like a missile. The wind roared in his ears. He flew past the robot's head. He was level with the face. He pulled his arm back. He felt the energy coursing through his right arm. The ghosts of 8 holders screamed in unison. One for all, 100%. You are, Izuku yelled, his voice echoing over the city, a poorly designed piece of hardware. He punched. Smash! The air pressure was cataclysmic. The robot's face didn't just dent, it crumpled. The shockwave tore through the chassis, blowing the back of the robot's head out. The massive machine tipped backward, defeated by a single blow. Izuku floated in the air for a second, suspended in the glory of the hit. Then gravity returned. He looked at his arm. It was purple. Broken. Flapping uselessly in the wind. He looked at his legs. Both broken from the takeoff. Falling. Calculation. Terminal velocity. Impact in 4 seconds. Survival probability, 0%. Izuku thought calmly. I forgot to calculate the landing. He plummeted. Slap! A hand touched his face. He stopped falling. He floated inches from the ground. Uraraka, pale and nauseous, held her hands together. Release, she gasped. Izuku dropped gently onto the concrete. Uraraka turned and vomited rainbow sparkles. Izuku lay there, staring at the sky. His limbs were screaming in agony. The pain was blinding, but his mind was clear. One for all, he whispered, a tear leaking from his eye. What a chaotic, illogical, magnificent power. The buzzer rang. Time's up. The students gathered around, staring at the broken boy and the destroyed giant. Did he just one-shot the 0-pointer? He sacrificed his arm? Is he dead? Recovery girl waddled onto the scene. Oh dear, she'd scared. Look at those injuries. Izuku turned his head. He looked at recovery girl. Chio, he rasped, using her first name, a slip of the Nezu tongue. Your triage protocol is slow. I require immediate stabilization of the humerus. Recovery girl blinked. Excuse me? Also, Izuku groaned, passing out from the pain, the 0-pointer's tread design is a lawsuit, waiting to happen. His eyes rolled back. Result, villain points, 45, rescue points, 60, total, 105, rank first. Status, admitted. The proposal of the American dream. The dawn broke over Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, casting a sickly, pale light over the monument to human negligence. The mountains of trash, rotting tires, rusted appliances, skeletal remains of bicycles, and unidentifiable sludge, stretched for miles, blocking the view of the ocean. It was a graveyard of consumerism. To Tashinori Yagi, standing tall in his skeletal form, it was a canvas. To Izuku Midoriya, it was a logistical nightmare and a biohazard zone. Behold, Midoriya Shonin! All Might bellowed, coughing slightly as he puffed out his chest. He held up a crumpled stack of papers, stapled together with what looked like sheer willpower. I have devised a curriculum. A path to power. I call it. He paused for dramatic effect. The wind blew a candy wrapper across his face. The aim to pass. American dream plan. Izuku stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He was wearing a pristine white dress shirt, a green vest, and dress shorts. He looked less like a boy about to engage in manual labor, and more like a tax auditor arriving to shut down a fraudulent business. Let me see that, Izuku said, extending a hand. All Might handed over the papers. It is a comprehensive schedule. We have 10 months until the UA entrance exam. This plan details your sleep, your diet, and the specific trash hauling rotations needed to build your vessel. Izuku adjusted the strap of his backpack. His green eyes scanned the documents. His pupils dilated, darting left to right at a speed that blurred. Scan complete. Izuku lowered the papers. He looked at All Might. He looked back at the papers. Yagi-san, Izuku said, his voice terrifyingly polite. Did you write this with a crayon? It's a marker. All Might defended. And I'd put a lot of thought into it. This isn't a training schedule, Izuku said, dropping the papers onto a nearby, relatively clean, rock. This is a suicide note formatted as a calendar. What? Izuku began to pace, his small shoes crunching on the gravel. Let us analyze the variables. You have allocated 4 hours of sleep per night. Inefficient. Muscle hypertrophy occurs during REM sleep. Depriving a growing adolescent of rest will result in cortisol spikes, muscle catabolism, and cognitive decline. I would arrive at the exam strong, yes, but hallucinating and emotionally unstable. He pointed a finger at the beach. Furthermore, your methodology for clearing this debris is lift heavy thing, carry heavy thing. That is the approach of a beast of burden, not a hero. It ignores leverage, torque, and the fundamental laws of physics. You are trying to build a tank using the instructions for a brick wall. All Might slumped, his ego taking a critical hit. But hard work is the essence of one for all. You need to forge your body. I intend to forge my body, Izuku corrected, stepping up onto a rusted washing machine to look All Might in the eye. But I also intend to forge my mind. One for all is a quirk of infinite potential. Giving it to a muscle-bound idiot is like installing a supercomputer in a toaster. It will simply overheat. Izuku reached into his backpack. He pulled out a leather-bound folio. He unzipped it, revealing a tablet, a set of blueprints, and a laser rangefinder. I have drafted an alternative proposal, Izuku said, a manic grin spreading across his face, the ghost of Nezu peeking through the human mask. I call it the high-spec optimization protocol. All Might looked at the tablet Izuku shoved into his hands. It displayed a 3D topographic map of the beach, color-coded by material density and salvage value. We are not just going to clean the beach, Yagi-san, Izuku declared, opening a thermos of Earl Grey. We are going to industrialize it. Phase 1, the scavenger hunt, weeks 1 to 4. The first month was not about cleaning. It was about acquisition. All Might, initially confused, quickly found himself demoted from master to lab assistant. We require raw materials, Izuku explained on day 3. He was wearing heavy welding gloves that went up to his elbows and protective goggles that made his eyes look enormous. Specifically, high-torque motors, hydraulic pistons, and copper wiring. The rest is slag. But Midoriya Shonen, All Might whined, holding a rusted bicycle frame. Wouldn't it be faster to just carry the trash to the truck? Faster? Perhaps. Smarter? No. Izuku crouched by a partially buried sedan. Think, Yagi-san. Why do heroes fail? Is it lack of strength? Rarely. It is lack of preparation. It is the inability to adapt to the environment. Izuku wedged a crowbar into the hood of the car. I am currently quirkless. My physical stats are below average. If I tried to lift this engine block, I will slip a disc. Game over. So, I must use my environment. He kicked a steel pipe under the crowbar, creating a fulcrum. Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. Izuku jumped onto the end of the crowbar. Crack. The hood popped open. Physics, Izuku said, wiping sweat from his forehead. It is the only superpower I currently possess. Now, extract the alternator. I need the copper coils. Yes, sir, All Might sighed, ripping the alternator out with one hand. The physical toll on Izuku was immense, despite his reliance on leverage. Scavenging was grueling work. He spent hours crawling through jagged metal, sawing through pipes, and dragging salvage to the base of operations, a concrete clearing he had swept clean near the seawall. His diet changed immediately. No more katsudon, Izuku announced to a horrified Inko. I require lean proteins. Chicken breast. Steamed fish. Broccoli. Spinach. And supplements. I have calculated the exact gram per body weight ratio of creatine and whey protein needed to support the impending workload. But Izuku, Inko cried, you're 10. You shouldn't be counting macros. I am building a vessel, mother, Izuku said, mixing a protein shake that looked like swamp water. This body must hold the power of a god. It cannot be built on pork cutlets. Back at the beach, the pile of useful junk grew. What are we building? All Might asked, looking at the heap of motors and gears. Izuku stood before a whiteboard he had dragged out of the trash. He drew a diagram. It looked like a crab mixed with a forklift. Manual labor is linear, Izuku lectured, tapping the board. I pick up one tire, I move one tire. Automated labor is exponential. If I spend 1 month building a machine that can move 10 tires at once, I will surpass your manual schedule by month 4. But the exercise? Do you think building a robot from scrap is sedentary? Izuku laughed darkly. Yagi-san, have you ever tried to hand crank a rusted generator to test the circuit? Have you ever held a 20-pound welding torch steady for 3 hours while suspending yourself from a crane hook to reach a joint? The isometric tension alone is superior to your refrigerator hauling plan. All Might scratched his head. I suppose, but it feels like cheating. Izuku's eyes narrowed. Villains cheat, Yagi-san? Disasters do not play fair. If a building is falling, do you complain that gravity is cheating? No. You use every tool at your disposal to stop it. I am simply creating tools. Phase 2, the Workshop of Madness, months 2 to 4. The beach began to change. Passers-by stopped stopping to stare at the trash. They started staring at the sparks. Izuku Midoriya had turned a corner of Dagoba Beach into a foundry. He had rigged a series of car batteries to a solar array made from shattered calculator screens and reflective siding. It wasn't pretty, but it generated enough voltage to run his power tools. Unit 01, Izuku muttered, tightening a bolt on a grotesque metal frame. Hydraulic pressure check. The machine, a four-legged walker made of rebar and car axles, hissed. A claw, fashioned from a trash compactor's jaws, snapped shut. Excellent. All Might stood at a distance, holding a fire extinguisher. Is it safe? Safety is a relative concept, Izuku mumbled, adjusting his welding mask. But the structural integrity is within the 95th percentile. Now, I need to test the load-bearing capacity. He turned to the machine. Unit 01. Lift. Izuku pulled a lever on the manual control rig. The machine groaned. Smoke belched from its exhaust, a modified motorcycle pipe. The claw descended, grabbed a refrigerator, and lifted it 10 feet into the air. Ha! Izuku cackled. It wasn't a hero's laugh. It was the laugh of a mad scientist who had just conquered nature. Look at the torque. Look at the efficiency. It would take a human 2 minutes to move that. Unit 01 did it in 6 seconds, Midoriya Shonen, All Might said, stepping closer. You're enjoying this too much. Izuku flipped his mask up. His face was streaked with grease, but his eyes were shining. I love high specs, he whispered. I love optimization. But the physical training was not neglected. Izuku integrated his body into the machines. To power the hydraulic press he built for crushing cans, Izuku didn't use a motor. He used a bicycle chain rigged to a heavy flywheel. Squats, Izuku grunted, his legs burning as he pedaled the contraption. The massive flywheel spun, storing kinetic energy. Whir chunk. Whir chunk. Every rotation crushed a block of aluminum. 100 reps, Izuku panted, sweat dripping onto the rusty metal. If I drop below 60 revolutions per minute, the machine jams. Failure is not an option. All Might watched him. He saw the boy's quadriceps straining, the veins popping in his neck. He's not just lifting weights, All Might realized. He's powering the factory. He's making his effort mean something. It was a profound lesson for the symbol of peace. All Might had always viewed training as a means to an end. For Izuku, the process itself was the goal. One evening, during a break, Izuku sat on a tire, drinking a protein-infused green tea, a culinary abomination he insisted was efficient. Yagi-san, Izuku said. Yes? Why is the support gear industry so stagnant? All Might blinked. Is it? Terribly. I have been analyzing the trash. I found a discarded gauntlet from a sidekick. The wiring is archaic. The ala is heavy. It seems heroes rely on their quirks so much that they neglect the hardware. Izuku swirled his tea. When I get to UA, I will need to have a serious conversation with Power Loader. But for now, he stood up. I need to strip the copper out of those microwaves. The market price for copper is up 2% this week. We need the funds to buy better welding rods. You're selling the trash? All Might asked, horrified. I am recycling resources and generating capital, Izuku corrected. Heroism costs money, Yagi-san. Suits, insurance, litigation. I am starting my war chest early. Phase 3, the human element, months 5 to 8. By month 5, the beach was half clear. Not just moved, but processed. Piles of sorted metal stood like trophies. Plastic was bagged and color-coded. The organic sludge had been composted. Izuku had read a book on agricultural biochemistry over the weekend. But Izuku hit a plateau. Muscle mass has increased by 12%, Izuku reported, looking at his reflection in a polished hubcap. But my reaction time is lagging. The machines do the heavy lifting, but they do not fight back. You need combat experience, All Might said. He was looking healthier too. Izuku had forced him onto a diet of nutrient-dense soups and banned him from drinking cheap soda. Agreed, Izuku said. I need a sparring partner. He looked at All Might. All Might gulped. Now, Midoriya Shonen, I am in a fragile state. I will not hit you, Izuku promised, wrapping his hands in bandages. I merely want to dodge. You will attempt to hit me. In your skeletal form, your speed is comparable to an average thug. It is a suitable baseline. They began in the sand. Start. All Might threw a lanky punch. Izuku didn't just dodge, he flowed. He stepped inside the guard, tapped All Might's elbow, and redirected the force. Analysis, Izuku said, breathing steadily. You telegraph your right cross by dropping your left shoulder. A common mistake for brawlers. I was the #1 hero. All Might protested, swinging again. You were a powerhouse who never needed to learn technique because you could flatten cities with a sneeze, Izuku countered, ducking under a chop. Now that you are weak, your lack of finesse is exposed. It was brutal, honest, and entirely accurate. Over the next 3 months, the sparring evolved. Izuku incorporated the environment. He would run up the side of his crab robot, backflip off a stack of tires, and use the loose sand to blind his opponent. Dirty fighting. All Might coughed, wiping sand from his eyes. Asymmetrical warfare, Izuku corrected. I am small. You are big. If I fight fair, I lose. Therefore, I will never fight fair. He pulled out a notebook from his back pocket. Hero Analysis Number 14. I have been studying the fighting style of Sir Night-Eye, Izuku said casually. His use of prediction and weighted seals is fascinating. I have been practicing calculating probable trajectories. He picked up a pebble. He didn't look. He threw it. It bounced off a metal pipe, ricocheted off a car door, and hit All Might gently on the forehead. Boop. Probability of impact, 98%, Izuku smirked. All Might rubbed his forehead. You're a scary kid. You know that? I am efficient, Izuku said. Now again. And this time, try to actually hit me. I need to simulate high-stress evasion. Phase 4, the final audit, month 9 to 10. The final month was a blur of activity. The beach was 90% clear. The local council was baffled. They had received anonymous reports, faxed by Izuku, detailing the exact tonnage of waste removed and a bill for consulting services, which Izuku kindly waived as a charitable donation. Izuku stood in the center of the beach. He was shirtless, sweating, his body a map of lean, functional muscle. He wasn't bulky like a bodybuilder. He looked like a gymnast, every fiber taut, every movement purposeful. He was dismantling Unit 01. Why take it apart? All Might asked, genuinely sad to see the robot go. Its purpose is fulfilled, Izuku said, unscrewing the hydraulic arm. Leaving it here would be littering. Besides, the parts are valuable. He wiped his hands on a rag. Yagi-san, status report on the vessel. All Might looked at the boy. He saw the scars on his hands from the metal. He saw the intelligence in his eyes. He saw a successor who had taken a pile of garbage and turned it into a gold mine. You're ready, All Might said softly. Physically, you're beyond ready. Mentally, well, you're terrifying. Good, Izuku said. Then we are on schedule. The tea ceremony of inheritance. The morning of the exam. 6 a.m. The sun rose over a pristine coastline. The white sand sparkled. The ocean waves lapped gently against the shore, no longer blocked by walls of trash. It was a miracle. Izuku Midoriya stood on the seawall, dressed in his middle school uniform. He held a thermos of the highest quality, a celebratory blend of Yakuro and matcha he had saved for this occasion. All Might stood beside him, holding a small wooden box. You did it, All Might said. You actually finished early. I optimized the sorting algorithm in month 7, Izuku shrugged. We had a surplus of time. Midoriya Shonin, All Might said, his voice trembling with emotion. You have proven yourself. You have the heart, the mind, and the body of a hero. He opened the box. Inside lay a single, golden hair. It curled slightly. Izuku stared at it. Hair, Izuku stated flatly. Yes. All Might beamed. One for all is passed on through DNA ingestion. I thought this would be the easiest way. Izuku looked at the hair with the expression of a food critic finding a fly in his soup. It is unhygienic, Izuku critiqued. Keratin is indigestible. The texture will be fibrous. And statistically, hair carries surface bacteria. Just eat it. All Might urged. We don't have time, Izuku sighed. He unscrewed the cup of his thermos. He poured the steaming green liquid. Very well. But I am doing this with dignity. He picked up the hair with a pair of tweezers he pulled from his pocket. He always carried tweezers. He dropped the hair into the tea. Steeping time, Izuku muttered. Hopefully the heat will sterilize it. He swirled the cup. The hair floated there, mocking him. For the future of Hero Society, Izuku whispered. He tipped the cup back and downed it in one gulp. He paused. He swallowed hard. He shuddered. Texture, 2 out of 10, Izuku gagged slightly. Flavor profile, metallic. Hints of American hair gel? Its natural volume. All Might defended. It is down, Izuku said, wiping his mouth with a handkerchief. Now what? Now, All Might said, pointing to the city, you go to UA and you show them what you're made of. The power will digest in a few hours. By the time the practical exam starts, you should feel the spark. Izuku nodded. He picked up his backpack. Yagi-san. Yes? Thank you. For the labor. All Might laughed. Anytime, my boy. Anytime. The written exam, predictive analytics. The written exam at UA High was notoriously difficult. It covered advanced mathematics, literature, hero law, and quirk physics. For most students, it was a hurdle. For Izuku Midoriya, it was a review session. He sat in the lecture hall, his pencil moving at a steady, rhythmic pace. Question 4. Calculate the kinetic energy required to stop a runaway train of mass 5,000 kilograms moving at 80 kilometers per hour over a distance of 50 meters. Simple Newtonian physics, Izuku muttered. However, the question fails to account for friction coefficients of the rails or wind resistance. Sloppy. He wrote down the answer, then added a footnote. Note, assuming a vacuum and frictionless surface. In a real-world scenario, the required force would be 12% lower due to environmental drag. He flipped the page. Essay question, what is the most important quality of a hero? Izuku smiled. This was the question Nezu had written 10 years ago. They still hadn't changed it? Typical bored laziness, Izuku thought. He began to write. He didn't write about justice or peace or saving people. He wrote about stability. A hero is a stabilizing agent in a chaotic system, he wrote. Society is an equation balanced on the edge of collapse. Villains introduce entropy. Heroes must apply counterforce not just to stop the villain, but to repair the structural integrity of the social contract. A hero who saves a life but destroys a city block is mathematically inefficient. True heroism is the minimization of net loss. He put his pencil down. He had finished with 20 minutes to spare. He looked around. Other students were sweating, erasing frantically. Bakugo was gripping his pencil so hard it looked like it might snap. Izuku leaned back, closing his eyes. He could feel it. A warmth in his stomach. A hum in his veins. The hair was digesting. One for all, he thought. The ghost in the machine. He could feel the presence of the previous holders. It wasn't a voice, but a sensation. Like a crowded room falling silent as the principal walked in. Hello, Izuku projected his thought inward. I am the new management. We are going to make some changes to the operating procedures. He felt a ripple of confusion. Amusement? From the void. Excellent, Izuku thought. Pre-practical strategy. During the lunch break, Izuku sat alone, analyzing the handout for the practical exam. Robots. Predictable, Izuku whispered, taking a bite of his meticulously balanced bento. The board loves robots. Low liability. Standardized scoring. He scanned the specs on the handout. 1-pointer, speed type. Weak armor. 2-pointer, balance type. 3-pointer, heavy armor. High firepower. 0-pointer, obstacle. Robots have sensors, Izuku mused. Sensors have blind spots. Robots have wiring. Wiring can be severed. He looked at his hands. He felt the power of one for all buzzing under his skin. It felt volatile. Dangerous. If I use this power at 100%, Izuku calculated, my limbs will shatter. My skeletal structure has been reinforced over the last 10 months, but the output of one for all is exponential. I need a regulator. He closed his eyes and visualized the power. All Might had said to clench his butt cheeks and yell smash. Crude, Izuku dismissed. I need a better visualization. He imagined a switchboard. A massive, complex control panel like the one in a nuclear power plant. One for all is the reactor core. My body is the turbine. I cannot open the floodgates. I must open the valve to 5%. He focused. He tried to draw out just a trickle of power. Green lightning flickered across his finger. ZZZZT, 5%, he whispered. Manageable. Sufficient for enhanced mobility, and striking power equivalent to a sledgehammer. Excuse me? Izuku looked up. A tall boy with glasses and a stiff posture was standing over him. Tenya Ida, you were muttering again, Ida said, chopping his hand. It is distracting to the other examinees trying to focus. Izuku looked at Ida. He analyzed him instantly. Tenya Ida? Family, Ingenium line. Quark engine. Calves. High speed. Linear movement. Rigid personality. Likely follows rules to the letter. My apologies, Izuku said smoothly. I was performing a pre-combat diagnostic. However, if my subvocalizations are disrupting your concentration, perhaps your focus is too easily broken. A battlefield is loud, you know. Ida stiffened. Aye, that is. Furthermore, Izuku pointed his chopsticks at the handout in Ida's hand. You are memorizing the point values. That is a mistake. What? The test is a simulation of heroism, Izuku said, packing up his bento. Heroism is not about points. It is about impact. If you chase the numbers, you will miss the variable. Variable? Ida asked. There is always a variable. Izuku stood up. Good luck, Ingenium brother. You will need more than speed today. He walked away, leaving Ida confused and slightly unsettled. As Izuku walked toward the changing rooms to change into his tracksuit, he felt a smile tugging at his lips. The game was afoot. He had the intel. He had the body. He had the ultimate quirk. And most importantly, he had a plan to make the UA entrance exam his personal playground. Time to teach them a lesson, Izuku whispered, his shadow stretching out, looking unmistakably like a beast with a long tail.